The date is September 9, 2023. India hosted the G20, the grouping of world's biggest economies. Now, this was a unique opportunity for the country to contribute to the important and pressing international issues.
Both leaders have arrived in New Delhi for the G20 Summit.
New Delhi for the G20 Summit.
India rolls out the red carpet for the G20 Summit.
Will there be a joint statement?
Now, before getting into the topic, let us first of all discuss what is the G20. So, G20 is a grouping of the world's 20 largest economies, and this includes Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, the EU, France, Germany, India, Indonesia, Italy, Japan, Mexico, Russia, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, South Korea, Turkey, the UK, and the US. Now, these countries account for 85% of the global GDP, 2/3 of the world's population, and 75% of the global trade. Now, looking at these numbers, any decision taken by the grouping has an impact on a global level, and every country on the earth is directly or indirectly affected by the decisions taken by the grouping. Now, within the G20 itself, there is a small group called Trioca. Trioca comprises of 3 countries, accounting for the current presidency, the past presidency, and the country which will be responsible for the next summit. So in this case, in 2023, India was the current president, Indonesia was the former president, responsible for the summit in 2022, and Brazil is the next president that will be hosting the summit in 2024. Now, as India would host the G20, the leaders from across the globe will attend the meeting in their official capacity. It will benefit India in many ways, some of which we will be discussing further in this video. Now see, the first thing that India has made loud and clear is that India is capable of hosting such big events. Media outlets across the globe have left no stone unturned to term India as an unsafe environment, be it politically, religiously, on human rights, or on the topic of the protection of our minorities. Despite the fact that India shares one of the most hostile borders with her neighbors, China and Pakistan, India is set to host the event with great exuberance. We have also conveyed a strong message to our hostile neighbors by holding key meetings in Srinagar and in the Tawang region of Arunachal Pradesh, which have historically been considered as unstable regions. Now, this shows how the situation in these areas has eased and has become more conducive that the meetings of such big events now are being conducted in these regions. Now, this will result in the world's perception of India being a very unstable country will change, and the people globally will look India as a very country with amicable environment, with rich culture and heritage, which provides safety along with. This will also help India to boost its tourism. This point shows India's diplomatic might and its soft power. Developing a consensus among the divided countries is a very big deal. Now, you will agree with me, with the war going on between Russia and Ukraine, the world has been divided into 2 blocks. The Western bloc, consisting of Western countries led by the US, which outrightly consider Russia as the sole responsible for the ongoing war. And the other bloc is of the countries like India, China, Iran, North Korea, and some other African countries which hold the view of Russia not being a sole aggressor for the ongoing war. And the war in Ukraine is the aftermath of the illegitimate endeavors of the NATO to expand more eastwards. And the more eastward expansion of NATO towards Russia provoked the war. So India, throughout the conflict, has neither condemned Russia nor has supported the war. It has upheld its neutral stance and advocated the means of dialogue and diplomacy to end the conflict. Now, this is the leaders' declaration of the G20 Summit, which was held last year in Bali, Indonesia. Now, you will see in the third point itself, the words like deplore, condemn are used against Russia. Now, these words in the language of diplomacy are considered very strict, stringent, and strong words against any nation. Now, this was seen because Indonesia supported the Western narrative throughout the course of war, that Russia is the sole aggressor of the ongoing war. A different case was seen this year when the summit was held in India itself. This is the leaders' declaration of the G20 summit, which was held in New Delhi. Now you will notice no words like condemn or deploy are used against any country or against Russia in the whole joint communique. Now, why is that? Now, this is because India, throughout the course of war, has stuck to its neutral stance and has neither supported the Western narrative nor the Russian narrative. Now, one would wonder why the Western countries would accept this Delhi declaration. Though they have condemned and deplored Russia at every global platform they have been on, be it G7, be it other G20 summits, then why accept the Delhi declaration? The Western countries accepted the leaders' declaration of the New Delhi summit only because the summit was held in India, and the Western countries, including the United States, cannot afford to disappoint India in any ways. And that is because deep down the United States knows that the real enemy is not Russia but China. And India is the only potent power in the Asia which can tame China. And the United States do not want to lose the only geographical leverage it has on China in Asia. And then there is general election in the United States the following year. That is the presidential elections of 2024. So, the United States cannot afford to disappoint the large number of Indian diaspora present in the United States and eligible for voting. So, this is the reason why the Western countries, led by the US, accepted the leaders' declaration of the Delhi summit without hesitancy. And then the next big thing was the inclusion of African Union in the G20. One cannot think of the Global South without the African Union. The African Union has 55 members, double the number which the EU has. Now this shows how important the Global South topic is for India. With the inclusion of African Union in the G20, now the whole grouping of G20 accounts for 88% of the global GDP and 79% of the global trade. It is India that has taken measures to alter the composition of the G20. No other presidency in the past had attempted to alter the composition of the grouping. Now, this will elevate the relationship between India and the African Union to the next level. Recently, the Indian Institute of Madras opened its first international campus in the country of Tanzania. So, this shows how much the African Union is important to India and how much it is important for India to build a good relationship with the African Union. Now, these steps will also strengthen the image of India as the leader of the Global South. Now, these were the key takeaways of the recent G20 summit, with which India has strengthened its image as a reliable partner and a global leader. I hope you learned something from this video. Stay tuned for more. Thank you and Jai Hind.